up guys, welcome back to Elderwood Games. Thomas here, and today I wanted to talk about multiplayer 40k. So what is multiplayer 40k? How we've been doing it at our shop is basically just 2v2s. We've been playing 4,000 point games, each player bringing 2,000 points, and we've been having a ton of fun. Basically, you're playing 40k just like normal. You're just on teams of 2. You're each getting your command points as normal, so you're not sharing the command points, which makes it a bit more fun. If not maybe a little bit overpowered for certain ones, but for the most part we've found that it's been pretty well balanced and a lot of fun just to play in that way. Also, it's just been a great way to really just enjoy the hobby in a new way, but also in the process of this we kind of learned a few things about what 40k as a multiplayer game can do to benefit newer players and veterans alike. For the newer players, what is really nice about playing multiplayer is that you can pair a newer person with a veteran person, and the veteran can kind of carry the newer player through a lot of the more trivial things of the game and kind of show them what they need to do certain things. But also the newer player is able to watch a more veteran player play the game and understand how stratagems and some of the more nuanced parts of Warhammer 40,000 actually work, and it actually ends up helping them become better. And what I saw in one of my games with a pretty much new person, this was really only their third game of 40,000, and they were able to really keep up and be able to, ultimately that team did beat our team, and he was able to, from turn 1 to where we actually ended turn 4, he was able to use stratagems. He still has a ways to go obviously, but he was able to use stratagems. He realized where he was missing some key abilities from units, and basically he was almost a different player from turn 1 to 4. So it kind of helped ramp up, and then also watching another player helped him more quickly learn what he was lacking and to effectively learn what he needs to do to become a better player going forward. Now on the veteran side of things, it's really just a fresh take on the game, right? You get to play allied with an army or faction that you've never, maybe not ever played against. Having their strengths tied in with your strengths helps just push you even further. In my first 2v2 game, it was me playing Tyranids. My teammate was playing AdMech, but playing a little bit more of a brawler kind of list with some of the robots. And our opponents was Emperor's Children and Death Guard. Now, I will say, if you're going to play one of these with Death Guard, we recommend making the Death Guard aura only applicable to Death Guard units and models. We did not do that, and it was pretty intense, to say the least, having Emperor's Children be able to benefit from the Death Guard aura. So keep that in mind, that really it should be, if it's an army rule, it is fully applicable just to your army. Death Guard is a weird one where their army rule is an aura, and auras technically say that they benefit friendly models, which your teammate would technically be, but we're going to kind of rule it in the future that friendly auras apply only to the friendly units from that army. And I recommend you doing the same, because otherwise you can really kind of have an unintentional kind of just brawler in that midst. And then in the same line, if you have an aura like the Swarmlord aura of, minus or +1 CP cost, I would just have that be your enemy, your opponent's stuff as well. So it's not detracting from your ally, but it is still working the way that it was intended. This just gives you a different way to play, and it feels less competitive. I think that's one thing that kind of comes into play with like 1v1 is like you really kind of want to win, right? Everyone wants to win, and even in like this 2v2, like obviously you want your team to win, but it's so chaotic and outbalanced because of all the different things going on that it really just ends up being like, oh, what's the fun thing to do? What can I do to like make something work the right way? And a lot of times you have to ditch plans and like go in full swing. And I think it's been a lot of fun kind of playing with people that I've played against before and kind of seeing like what their strategies are, and kind of working with them to figure out, okay, what is your army going to be better at than mine, and what's mine better at than yours, and being able to move it up the board. And it kind of helps you gain a little bit more of appreciation for what other armies can do. And it also is just going to make you a better player when playing against those armies in the future, because now you have a little bit more of like a intimate understanding of how they work. So you're able to know like, oh, this is when Emperor's Children is going to use this one, and this is when Death Guard is going to use this thing. And it was just a lot of fun. And I would just highly recommend that if you've never given it a shot, just do it. You know, team up with a couple people, do a 2v2. You don't have to do 4,000 points. I mean, that's pretty ridiculous, but it is a ton of fun. We ended up playing with twists and with challengers just to make it all the more chaotic and all the more fun. And we ended up having a blast. So much so that like other people that were in the shop the first time we did it, they were like, oh man, like you guys were having such a great time. Like we want to try. And that's how we got one of the newer players to join us that next weekend to play again. And really, like with having even a newer person, we were able to get through a full game of 40K within, you know, technically like 7.5 hours, like the full time our shop is open. It doesn't feel very much longer than a normal game. You can even like split things up, which I do kind of recommend doing. So basically, if player A is attacking opponent A and then player B is attacking opponent B, you guys can each resolve those attacks and kind of work through all the A versus A and the B versus B of each phase. And then once those are done, you can swap, and then it'll be A into B and B into A. And then you can kind of get through, you know, shooting and fight phases effectively the same rate you would get through in a normal game, just because you're doubling up and that sort of thing. So it's effectively like two 2,000 point games happening at the same time, just a little bit different, you know. It's just been a great time. It's inspired me to start working on a primer for these things to be able to give some more hard rules for team battles, for free-for-alls, and also like asymmetric battles, like if you wanted to do like 1v2s or, you know, 2v3s if you ever wanted to for some reason, and trying to figure out what that looks like. And I plan to kind of work on that maybe through the rest of this year, just because I do want to do some trial runs with some of my stuff before I kind of put it to paper and bring it out to you guys. But look forward to that. Hopefully I'll be able to have that before the end of the year, and we can kind of have a video discussing it, and I can talk through what I learned and that sort of thing. But if you ever find yourself kind of getting drugged down with the typical Warhammer 1v1 kind of setup, talk with some of your friends or some people at your local shop and see if they would be interested in doing something like this. You know, if you have a large collection, maybe offer to do a 1v2 with them or some other kind of asymmetrical combat kind of deal. Or if you all have roughly the same size armies, be like, hey, you know, how would you guys feel about doing like a 2v2 4,000 point game? We each bring our 2,000 point armies and kind of decide who's going to be paired up with who, you know, either day of or leading up to it. You can make it thematic, you can make it random. It was kind of interesting when we played, when I was teamed up with the AdMech player, we kind of theorized that the Chaos were invading, you know, Death Guard and Emperor's Children were invading this sector, and the AdMech had figured out the pheromones for the Tyranids and were able to lead them as if they were their own. So it kind of gave a little bit of light as to why our two factions were working together. And hilariously, the two players of Death Guard and Emperor's Children, they are great players in their own right, but they're not the best at communicating at times. So it really felt like the Emperor's Children and the Death Guard, like on the battlefield, like they were kind of stepping on each other's toes, getting in each other's way in a really kind of funny way. And we had a blast playing through that. And then in our last one, I was paired up with Emperor's Children, the Emperor's Children player, and then we were playing against the same AdMech player, but a newer player that's playing Dark Angels. We learned very quickly that that combination is quite strong when you have the shooting power of AdMech and the melee fortitude of the Dark Angels and that sort of thing. So AdMech was just able to just pick off everything we had from across the table. And then we learned that as we got closer, the Deathwing Knights and the Lion could basically take out anything they wanted to. And basically after, I think it was the beginning of turn 3, we kind of knew like we're not winning this game. And it just like kept on going down and down and down. But it was still a ton of fun, and it teaches you a new way to play. It also helps with deployment in a weird way, I think. You don't really expect, obviously when you're deploying 4,000 points of models, obviously you can still do reserves and that sort of thing. You can have, you know, your 500 points up in the clouds. But still, that's, you know, 1,500 points roughly between both of you. So it's about 3,000 points deployed. And we just did it on a standard size table. I think if you did any bigger than 4,000, you would likely need to extend a dimension one way or the other. Or, just push the tables together and just have a big table. You kind of learn like, okay, well, if I need stuff that needs to get up front, I need to work with my teammate and be like, hey, my Hormagaunts, they're just going to advance up the board as quickly as possible, try and establish the middle, and my Norns need to get on their objectives. So if you don't mind, like, can I have them on the front, and then you can deploy everything else that you need behind me. And then if they had something that needed to be more in front, I would just kind of shift my Hormagaunts over and deploy more toward the middle and one side, and they would be able to deploy more on kind of their side and that sort of thing. And it kind of teaches you like what does work and what doesn't work. And obviously when you're staring down the barrel of 4,000 points coming at you, it kind of changes how you need to deploy, and it helps you kind of to realize more angles that can happen and that sort of thing. So all in all, I think that multiplayer for Warhammer 40,000 is a absolute blast, and I highly recommend it to anyone that has never tried it before, and even those that are newer in the hobby. It can be a great way for you to join into a game and have the veterans that are playing with you still feel like they're playing true Warhammer 40,000, as they're still basically playing a full-scale game, and then you're just there as their ally, and you're able to watch a veteran player and strategize with a veteran player who's going to be able to tell you, this is when you can heroically intervene or overwatch, or do these things that aren't necessarily learned right away. And ultimately, I think it just skyrockets your ability to learn the game that much faster. But let me know down in the comments below, have you ever played multiplayer 40K? Or are you planning to, now that you've heard how much fun that we've had and can kind of attest to what you end up coming across when you play? Let me know down below, and I will read them, and I will see you all in the next one.